Welcome to Encinitas, California. I'm standing across the street from the Self-Realization Fellowship Meditation Gardens. Today you'll visit a Harmonium Museum, a truly one-of-a-kind experience. During this visit, we'll take you on a virtual tour of the museum, learn about the history of the harmonium, and watch an interview with the curator and steward, David Todd. If you're ready, let's head on up.
Wow, David, this space is amazing. What is all of this? Where did all these harmoniums come from?
You know, I get asked that question all the time. And believe it or not, we didn't find these harmoniums. Each and every harmonium in here was designed and handcrafted.
So there must be a story behind that. Can you tell us about it?
Well, I came from Miami as a young devotee in the mid-70s. And when I arrived in Encinitas, one of the first things I did was purchase a harmonium from the import store. And it became my regular pilgrimage because he carried any number of harmoniums in there, and they were always a great fascination for me. In particular, I was very interested in the harmonium known as a dulcitina because Master used to play the dulcitina, so I was naturally attracted to that harmonium.
What was the quality that you were looking for in the instruments that you were trying out?
Mostly, I was very interested in sustain, and that a harmonium's notes would sustain playing softly for Master's chants. And that was actually more important to me than even sound. What's the sustain like? Can you play at low volumes, which is a testimony to the springs in here. The tuning sounds very good.
Wonderful. And so I understand that around this time you received an invitation to go to India.
Yeah. Well, eventually, I found a dulcitina. It wasn't 100%, but it was pretty good. And so I purchased the dulcitina. And then in the late 90s, I was invited to go to India to visit Master's pilgrimage places. And I thought, well, for sure, I'm going to be able to find a dulcitina in India. So I very cavalierly gave away my dulcitina. And so off I go to India with great expectations of not only finding a dulcitina, but the enjoyment of visiting Master's pilgrimage places.
I can only imagine the feeling of arriving in India on this sacred pilgrimage, but also with the additional hope of finding this harmonium. How did you even go about this search?
It was a combination of being excited about visiting Master's home in Forgorpar Road and Serampore and so on. But also Calcutta has some of the finest harmonium manufacturers in India. And so we got the name of one, and we found that harmonium manufacturer. It's not as simple as looking them up in the yellow pages. Everything is by word of mouth. But he had no dulcetinas, but he directed us, which is often the case in India. They'll tell you where next to go, and we went there and went there and went there to any number of different music stores in Calcutta, and we never found not even one dulcetina. And I was actually shocked because I thought it would be pretty straightforward to find at least one dulcetina in India. Our pilgrimage took us from Calcutta to Varanasi. And Varanasi is also a haven for devotional music, and there were any number of music stores there. And so again, I went from store to store looking for a dulcetina, but with no luck. From there, we went from Varanasi to Delhi. And Delhi has, oh my gosh, so many music stores. And we went from one store to the next, to the next, to the next. I found one store who had actually a very nice dulcetina. But it was important to me that we do something to this dulcetina to even further increase the sustain and being able to play softly like this. And they didn't want to do this at all. I was getting fairly discouraged, and our guide took us to one last place before we were heading off to North India.
Wonderful. And so what did you find in this place?
Well, to my surprise, he had 3 dulcetinas. And I admittedly was a little bit giddy about finding these instruments. In this shop, there was Ricky and his brother Rocky, and their father worked there. And his father had a music store in Old Delhi for at least 50, 60 years. So they were really well established in the music community in New Delhi. What was important to me was that Ricky was willing to work with me to help make this a better instrument. And at that time, the only thing we really knew how to do was replace the reeds, to put a more efficient reed in them. And so that was our strategy, was to take the instrument and replace the reeds. I was to go to North India and then retrieve the modified dulcetina before I went home. Now, a couple of things that were actually fairly interesting. It was my first time encountering my friend who I was traveling with, always negotiated for everything. And Ricky said, no, 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 no. Everything here is fixed price, a fixed price. So I stepped back and watched this drama play out between the two of them, and remember walking back to our car, and he said to me, wow, you know, he's a really good businessman because he wouldn't move on the price. And it served actually as an introduction in some regards to what was to come with our doing business together. So, Ricky, tell me about the first time we met when I came to your store. Do you remember this?
Yes.
Then tell me, what do you remember?
That was a long time. I think it's 1997, right? Yeah, you came in the evening, tired. Do you have harmoniums or do you have dulcetinas? Then, as I remember, I show you a couple of them. Then you will be happy to see this, and you say like, yeah, okay, it doesn't have this, it doesn't have that, but I don't remember exactly, but you took one of them.
I remember asking you to put the steel reeds.
Yes.
And you because the steel reeds were bigger.
Yeah.
You had to remake the harmonium.
Actually, I'm talking about the sustain.
Yes.
Then I'll show you one of the steel reed harmonium. Right, the regular one. Then they say, is it that possible? We can make that harmonium in this.
Yes.
So that was the starting.
Yeah.
We're starting big harmonium for you.
Okay.
You mentioned that you were expecting to bring an instrument home with you at the end of your trip. How did that turn out?
Well, you can only imagine that coming back from North India to Delhi, my thoughts were, we got to get to this music store so I can pick up my Dulcitina. I was so excited. When I got there, Ricky says, "Oh, I'm very sorry, it's not ready yet," and I was disappointed. And again, this served as an early lesson for me in patience and starting to realize that it's not a matter of disrespect. It's just a matter that Indians oftentimes, when you're doing business, especially, run on a different time scale. And so I had to go home without my prized Dulcitina.
When did it finally arrive?
About 3 months later, I picked it up from the port of entry in San Diego, and it was crated in a wooden box. And I couldn't drive fast enough to get back to Encinitas to open it up. And I was so wonderfully surprised because they didn't just take these reeds and put them into the Dulcitina to gain efficiency. What it had taken all this time was they completely rebuilt the Dulcitina. And I realized right away looking at it that the quality was just so exceptional. I was just so happy, so pleased. And one of the things throughout this entire endeavor that became centrally important is gratitude. And I immediately called Ricky and thanked him for his efforts. I realized too that this Dulcitina, because the Dulcitinas I had seen in the previous years, this Dulcitina held a lot of promise. So what I did was I took the Dulcitina to the men's ashram here in Encinitas, and the monks placed an initial order for 8 Dulcitinas. And this really constituted our first business transaction.
So then the order for the 8 Dulcitinas really marked the beginning of a long-term collaboration with the Singh family. What was the next step?
That following year, I was very excited to meet Ricky again and to extend our business relationship. And I remember him inviting me down into the basement of his music store, and we sat on the floor with the fan going over us and surrounded by all these beautiful string instruments. And the first thing we talked about was, cost. What would the cost be of making these instruments, and that I would never negotiate costs with him, that he would tell me what he considered to be a fair price, but what was really non-negotiable was quality. So I would pay whatever he asked, but we always had to hold quality as our highest aspiration. So Ricky, when it came to pricing and cost, how did you work that out with myself? And what do you feel about how we had business with one another and the costs that we associated with the development of the harmoniums?
Actually, cost and making is two different things. Yes, we earn something, then only we can survive our business. So the costing of these harmonium, I never think like I'm making this harmonium to earn money out of it. So that was the feeling always till the date I'm making harmoniums. That's like a devotion, is like a puja. So yes, I took profit out of it. Otherwise, I can't survive my business. But this is like you're making your home or something for your family. So it's like this. The second thing I was really very, very interested in was he willing to work with me and continuing to build out improvements, not only with the Dulcitina, but subsequently with concert harmoniums. And he was very excited about doing this. And you have to understand that this is allowed because the Father allows it to take place. Many of the things over the years that were developed
really had nothing to do with the functioning of a harmonium. It pushed out on the aesthetics and art of the instrument itself. And in order to legitimize this, Ricky always needed to get permission from his father, and his father himself, being an artist, was very supportive in all these endeavors. And I think he saw that Ricky and I were building a deep, a loving, abiding friendship. And so it encouraged him to allow us to do things that you wouldn't normally do. Sitting there with Ricky down in his basement, I remember him asking one of the workers to go and get some chai and biscuits. And he brought them down, and they were sitting next to me, and we're sitting on the floor, and I'm very focused on what we want to accomplish. I'm very excited that we're doing this. And Ricky noticed that I wasn't drinking any of the tea or eating the biscuits, and I just kind of brushed it off, and he says, "No, I think you should have some nourishment." And it stopped me in my tracks, because it was a kindness that he was extending to me. And again, it portended of the kind of relationship that he and I would have going forward, that was based in kindness and caringness and consideration for one another, and not just all about the business.
Wonderful. Could you tell me a little more about this family that owns this shop?
Well, Papa, who I affectionately referred to him as, and his two sons. He helps the two sons out, but Ricky and Rocky pretty much run the day-to-day operations of the music store. Papa had this store back 50, 60 years back, and as mentioned, he was very, very well established in the community, and all musicians in North India knew where to go to get the very finest string instruments and harmoniums like this. And Papa, in many regards, in a business environment, would give permission to his sons to do the types of things that we wanted to do with the harmoniums. And over a period of time, he embraced me as his son, and it was very endearing to know that I was part of this beautiful family.
That's so lovely. These ideas of kindness, trust, were really important in setting the foundation for this working relationship with this family. Can you tell us a little more about how you worked with them?
This is something that evolved over time, and it evolved as my understanding evolved, and I became exposed to the various aspects of a different culture that I was working within. From a Western perspective, when you have to say to someone, this is not working correctly, we have a business arrangement like this, it's very cut and dried. I needed to be able to say to Ricky, when we were doing innovations and building out our harmoniums, that this feature or that feature was not working correctly, but do so in a manner that was constructive and not critical. And it was also very important that when we were building out features and trying new things out, that there was an expression of gratitude, because he's doing things that traditionally have not been done when building a harmonium. And he is getting permission from his father to do and to focus on these efforts, because this is not how harmoniums had been made. And so this started our trust with one another. And a lot of it was based on patience. You can have all the trust in the world, but if you don't have patience, then you're going to, give up. And so along with that, my learning here was to be patient when different things that we were trying out took any number of iterations to improve, and get closer to our objective.
Can you talk about the process of working with the Singh family and the harmonium artisans?
You know, working at 12,000 miles away, it was very, very challenging. Today, you know, we pick up the phone, we have Zoom, we have WhatsApp, and it's very, very immediate and real time. Back then, what we did was, if I had ideas that we wanted to try or changes that needed to be made, I would write them all down, and I would create specifications, I would take pictures, I would make drawings like this. One of our local ministers has a real passion for harmoniums. So quite often in the afternoon I get a knock on the door and he would come in, and we were like two kids in a candy store, and we would just talk about harmoniums. And from that, there was a lot of inspiration on some things that we could try, as long as we were in an experimenting mode. So we would take all these changes, put them into a document, and then FedEx them to India. They would put these changes into a harmonium and then send the harmonium to myself. I would say only about 60% of the time did the things that we want change actually make it into the harmonium successfully. And some of the harmoniums, even in this room, went back and forth to India at the time, even more so than myself. And so this went on and on and on until we, started to refine some of these features of we were very interested in improving the keystroke of the keys. Very, very interested primarily in our bellows and the sustaining of notes. And then we also wanted to push on the variables that would contribute to a better sounding harmonium. The whole idea of sustain is very difficult in India because everything is a very loud expression. So when you talk about modulating volume down, it's not an easy concept like this. And for several years, back and forth, we would talk about, boy, these harmoniums really need more sustain. More sustain means that you can play them softly. One Sunday, Ricky's brother Rocky went with me to the Delhi Kendra. And the devotee playing harmonium at the time did a wonderful job, and it was a wonderful meditation. And afterwards, Rocky volunteered, now I understand why it's important for the harmoniums to play softly like this. He was able to experience it for himself. But still, it wasn't 2 or 3 years before we were able to better understand how to make this happen.
So how did you go about achieving some of these improvements? There are so many qualities that you were seeking, such as playing softly. What were some of the specifics?
Primarily the qualities that we were looking to improve upon were air, the volume of air that harmonium held, which translated into sustain, and which then also translated into being able to play softly. And for our chanting, we oftentimes desired to play softly. So air was a very, very important aspect to improve within the harmonium. The next one was sound. We wanted to do our very best at providing the best sound within our harmoniums, and oftentimes did experiments. At one time we built almost 6 harmoniums with 6 different types of reeds in them to try to come up with the nicest sounding harmonium, especially for the air environment. In one sense, you have a steel reed, which is very efficient, but kind of harsh. On the other end, you have a copper reed, which is very soft and a much sweeter sound, but you need a very strong, airtight environment to support the copper reeds.
See, everybody has a desire to make reeds which match to European quality. Like in the 70s, we got German reeds. France reeds. But the thing is, the material of the tongue, they don't get the right thing. Like the symbols we are using, minor, zilzian, it looks like a brass symbols, but there's a different mixture, different quality of the material. That makes a difference. This way, the boot they buy from the market, and there is a wire. So they cut it according to the size, repeat it here, finish the boot, finish the reeds, then they tune it. And there's a small gadget where they tune the reed, the raw reed, the basic tuning. Then they fix in the harmonium and tune it. Final tuning. That's the way. So this is the main reeds they have, and they make copies with this.
And another thing that was very important to us was this whole notion of playability, our keys. The keys on a lot of harmoniums the edges are very sharp. And when you're not playing a harmonium like a piano and striking, you're actually opening and closing valves. You're transitioning from one key to the next to the next. So we actually spent quite an effort re-engineering the softness and the tactile experience of these keys by rounding the edges and using a nice soft nylon.
So it's so fascinating to hear about all of these adjustments and all the improvements that went into creating these instruments and to creating a more ideal sound. As you described the process, one thing that stands out for me is that every component, every adjustment was made or done by hand. Can you tell us more about the handmade aspect of building these instruments?
To me, that was one of the most exciting and fun of all the different things that we did. Ricky took me to where the craftsmen were, and walking in a room with them all sitting on the floor on their mats, and not only using their hands but using their feet as an extension of their hands to hold the pieces that they were working on. For example, just the washers that we used on these harmoniums were all handmade. One individual would be pounding these washers out of a piece of brass, and it always got to me because this individual is making a livelihood, his whole livelihood, out of making washers. Others have suggested, well, you can find a much nicer washer, just go out and buy them. And I thought, never. These washers are all handmade, and this man is making his, livelihood out of doing this. Another thing we did was round the corners of the harmoniums. It was a very conscious idea that we wanted our harmoniums to be very inviting. And so that meant rounding all of our corners. And for the outer cabinetry, it took them 10 days just to cut out the outer box to make these dovetail joints. When Ricky and I visited the craftsmen, it was very important that the corners of the harmonium be really, really nicely rounded. And it was the first time examining these dovetail joints, and they were sharp at the corners, as you would expect. But because of how we sit at the harmonium, I didn't want these edges cutting into our shins. And so the craftsman took a plane and actually planed these corners, and Ricky and I would examine them and go a little bit more, until we set the pattern for all future harmoniums being so nicely rounded, which was one of our themes really for these harmoniums. Ricky and I would talk about this, that we really wanted everything to be very nicely rounded everywhere on the harmonium. And for me, it was a matter of introducing this feminine touch to the softness of all the edges and sides and so on. The other thing we wanted to do was improve on our keys. Traditionally, the keys are very sharp. And when you're playing the harmonium, you're not hitting keys, you're pressing on notes. And so you're literally transitioning from note to note. And when you're transitioning and you're running into the adjacent key, if they're sharp, then it's distracting. Or if the key press is too deep, it's distracting. And so we decided that we would adopt a 7 millimeter depth, and that our keys were made out of a plastic with a nylon laminate on top that we could really file down and polish so that the edges were very smooth. Now, one thing that always surprised me is that the keys rubbed one another, like for 2 or 3 years, and I would say to them, I can't get a rupee note in between these keys. Why is that? You know, they're always rubbing one another. And as hard as they tried, it took literally almost 3 years before we really had a beautiful functioning keys. So that, with the improvements of the air, the beautiful roundness of the cabinetry, and the smoothness of the keys, were very major improvements.
So Ricky, in the development of these very, very high quality museum harmoniums with all the wonderful art and craftsmanship in it, I know that these craftsmen came from all over India. How difficult was it for you to find the artisans across India and to get them to do this specialty work for these museum quality harmoniums?
That was the real job. You know, David see every night a dream. Oh, the harmonium should be like this. This thing should be here. Mother of pearl keys? No. Stone keys? No. Bone keys? Some beautiful lotus here, something here and there. And to make that dreams true, God bless us, and I can find different craftsmen. Some are from Mysore. India is a huge country. We have everything here. But it's very hard to find the right craftsmen. Mother of pearl, it comes from South India, Mysore. Then the inlay work is from Saharanpur, Uttar Pradesh. And then the grill work and all is all typical traditional Indian works. Is available in India, but it's very hard to find and combine them to make the things. That's the I don't know how we make that harmony. That's just the blessings being able to make it.
So much effort and energy went into working on sound quality. But when you look at these incredible instruments in this space, they're also so visually beautiful as well. Why was it important to adorn these instruments with art?
Wow, you know, one of our local monastics told me a beautiful story about this sadhu, and he had a group of disciples. And every time the sadhu went to meditate, he would get dressed up in his finest robes. And the disciples questioned him and said, "Sir, why is it when you sit to meditate, you get dressed in your finest robes?" And he said to them, "Well, if you were going to get married, would you dress in your rags?" And they said, "Of course not." And he said, "Well, when I sit to meditate, I sit in anticipation of communing with my Mother Divine, and I want to be with her in the very finest and most beautiful way." And so making a beautiful harmonium, not only just sounding beautiful and playing beautiful, but actually aesthetically beautiful, is something that you look forward to, sitting and playing and chanting. It was important also that we make them beautiful so that the craftsmen themselves could appreciate what they were doing. And the craftsmen, to include Ricky and his family, they needed to understand that what they were doing was unusual. And there was this notion that it was already special because they were being made for the Western marketplace. But by adorning them, they were like these beautiful elements of devotion that they themselves were making. And one day I asked Ricky, I said, do you appreciate what you're doing? And he told me two stories. He said he took a handful of our instruments from New Delhi to Calcutta. Now there are two schools of thought in making harmoniums. One is in Calcutta and one is in Mumbai. So we took a handful of these harmoniums to Calcutta because there are a number of manufacturers there. In India, when you want to scale, what we would do in the West is we would add a machinery. Might add cutting something out with a laser. We might change the process. In India, the notion of scaling, if you want to scale up your production, is a matter of adding additional craftsmen. So Ricky took some of these instruments from New Delhi to Calcutta to talk to a number of the different, very reputable harmonium makers in India, looking for craftsmen who were willing to do this high-end work. And every single solitary manufacturer laughed at him. They say, why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? You don't need to make the corners rounded. Why are you doing dovetail joints? Why are you laminating the keys? Why are you doing this with the bellows and so on and so forth? And he said every single solitary one of them laughed at him. Now, the important thing here is that Ricky told me this story. And it was indicative of he himself appreciating that what they were doing really set the bar very, very high. The other thing he said was that there was an Afghani man that used to come, and for a long hiatus he wasn't able to come because music wasn't allowed to be played, and he started coming back, and he knew that he didn't have a lot of money, and this man would buy some harmoniums and bring them back to Afghanistan so they could be played and more music introduced back into culture and society. This man came into the store, and Ricky asked him to wait downstairs while he attended customers. It just so happens we had about 8 or 10 of these big, beautiful harmoniums completed, and they were sitting down there, and this man who had been accustomed to a very simple, inexpensive harmonium saw these big harmoniums and started to play them. Ricky said he came upstairs and he says, what are these harmoniums? You've never told me about these harmoniums. How come, and how much are they? I want to buy all of them. And Ricky quoted some outrageous price, thinking that would turn him away. And he said, okay. Now this man who barely had enough money to buy a few simple harmoniums was willing to purchase all these harmoniums because they were so exceptional. And Ricky again told me this story, indicating how much he appreciated the quality of what they were doing. As an aside, Ricky and his family sold a lot of guitars, which is becoming more the mainstay of music for the younger generation in India. So Ricky and Rocky would travel to China, and they would buy literally a whole container full of guitars. And Ricky said, you know, now when I talk to the manufacturers about the guitars we want and the features, I am learning about how to communicate with them and talk about the various features and quality issues that they would have normally glossed over and we just have to live with. And now he's insistent that the guitars that he buys are of a much, much higher quality.
Thank you for sharing that. It's amazing to hear how this collaboration and this work really affected the way that the Singhs went about their own business.
So, Ricky, what's really important is, I think, is your own deep appreciation for the quality of the work that you, your family, and the craftsmen are doing. Without your own appreciation, it would be very hard for you to put your own heart and soul into the development of these instruments. And you obviously do, because the quality is something that the world has never seen before. So let me hear in your own words how you feel about your own quality of effort.
like I can't say much, but the main thing is like when we start making these harmonium and to go different craftsmen to make this type of thing, that type of thing, like this special kind of reeds. As we got old German reeds, I go to makers to make that type of reeds. Nobody's want to understand. Everybody's laughing. Why you want this? We are making from this from 50 years. And what is the special in your desire? Why you want to make it is different. But I know what we want to make, because when you're doing some work and you get good appreciation, you feel to do something new. Because harmonium, you can go anywhere to India. Everybody's making harmonium. You can get easily harmonium everywhere. But it's not like that which get you satisfied. When we make these things, that's forever. Even after 100 years, anybody can see these things. These are the masterpieces for masters.
We are in a room with so many incredible instruments, and it would be so amazing if you could show us some of these beautiful museum quality instruments.
I'd be happy to.
This harmonium is a 3-reed copper harmonium. It's made out of natural Burmese teakwood. The cabinetry has hand-cut dovetail joints. Around the base are hand-cut out of Jodhpur, a floral design. Under the stops, that elaborate floral inlay is done in Jaipur. The keys are all bone keys that are made by a family that live outside of New Delhi. The black keys are wood keys, and they're all handmade out of teakwood. The top of the harmonium, what we call the tone chamber, is rounded, again all hand carved. And in the center is a bas-relief of Hanuman and Ram. This particular instrument took 7 years to complete because of the complexity of the top tone chamber, integrating it with the body itself. This is a 4-reed scale changer with a coupler. The artwork, not only on top, but around the entire instrument, is of vines that the art was done in the United States by an artist here. It was all hand carved in India, and what we have around the top and the bottom are inlaid leaves out of lapis and flowers out of mother of pearl. The keys are bone, and the dark keys are teakwood. This is a Dulcitina, 2 reeds. It's made out of Indian red rosewood. On either panel, on the left and on the right, you have inlaid design out of mother of pearl. The keys are mother of pearl from the seas of South India. The black keys are red rosewood, and the design on the front is also done by an artist from the Lake Shrine. It's of the theme Spirit and Nature. So you have both birds and a geometric pattern around each of the birds. The patterns themselves are made out of wood and mother of pearl and lapis, whereas the birds on the inside are made out of semi-precious stones. This beautiful Dulcitina is made out of Indian rosewood. It has what we call butterfly bellows. The keys are a nylon laminate. The black keys are again hardwood. The inlay on the front is Arjuna and Krishna in the chariot. This harmonium is a 5-reed harmonium that's made out of French pearwood. There is this beautiful wood carving around the base that is done in Jodhpur. The inlays under the stops are actually bone inlays. The keys are all mother of pearl that came from the seas of South India. The black keys are made out of a beautiful dark rosewood. The inlay on top is Our Lady of Guadalupe, and it's a marquetry using different colored woods. This harmonium has 5 sets of copper reeds. It has a rounded tone chamber on top. It's made out of Indian cherry wood and is adorned by hand-carved floral design around the base, and under the stops are inlaid wood design. The keys are all handmade out of teakwood. The black keys are made out of dark rosewood. The tone chamber has a depiction of Radha and Krishna and a cow inlaid.
Thank you, David, for sharing these beautiful harmoniums with us. So all of the harmoniums that we see at the Encinitas gift shop here in town and also at the Self-Realization Fellowship Convocation in Los Angeles are a direct result of a decades-long process of working with the Singh family and collaborating, experimenting, discovering. There must have been so much learning in this. What can you share about that and what the takeaways were?
Everything we did, you know, that's probably the most important thing are the learnings. There is a monastic here in our community that asked me that very question. He said, what did you learn from all of this? And I actually spent almost a year or two thinking about this, and I realized that I learned so much about our harmonium. I learned about woods from a luthier in Bavaria, how to use woods to promote sound. We learned about how to change the configuration of many components within the harmonium to make it sustain air and to sound better. We learned how to change the dynamics to make it play easier. So there are many, many things about the harmonium that I had no idea previous to this that I learned. One of the most beautiful and enriching aspects of this whole adventure was learning about a different culture and what was important to them, and to be able to let my guard down and to exist as an extension of an Indian family, and through that friendship to also do business like this. That was just so unbelievably enjoyable and opened me up to all the wonders of the Indian heart like this. When I grew up, my parents were both artists, and they were actually really good artists, and they met at an art school. And growing up, my belief was that they could pretty much build, paint, create anything, and I saw that as a young boy. And I thought, well, I don't have that capability. And doing and going through this process of working with another culture and learning about, you know, the medium, which was the harmonium, I came to understand that this is just a different facet of creativity, and that each of us is given and blessed by this unique creative expression, and that there's an infinite creative potential that exists in all of us.
You know, this all happens with the blessings of God and definitely from my family, my father. This is our joint business. Me, my brother, father, we are all together in the business. And happening to making this harmonium, this is their big sport. Sometimes I was so upset, fed up to too much of arguments with my craftsmen, not my craftsmen, the inlay man, the ivory man, the bone man, to do this, to that, to that. They give me a time limit. Okay, 2 months, and you don't believe it. Instead of 2 months, sometimes go 2 years to do that thing. Some of the harmoniums out of this collection, it takes more than 2 years to make, and this is the limit of the everything. You can wait 2 years to make one harmonium. But this is definitely happens with the support of my dad, my brother. I have a very busy business here. I hardly find time to go there and that. But Papa says, no, no, no. You want to do this, you can do this. So this is happening only with the blessings of my family, my father.
Just for what's gone to me, just for what's gone to me, just for what's gone to me, just for what's gone to me. 嗯。
thank you so much for sharing your story with us today.
Well, you're very welcome.